All right, everybody. Welcome to the stream. We're here today to talk about a Teams event that we went and participated in. And with me, I got Danny Knight. He was on one of the teams up at the event, and also Thomas Martin, who was part of the organization or group that was organizing it, and also played in it. And so the actual event was HammerTime Teams Smoke Show. It was in Kelowna, BC, in Canada. The format was 5-man teams, WTC style, terrain layouts, and scoring. And they were 10 teams at the event. So welcome, guys. Appreciate coming on board to do a little chat. So we're going to jump into it. Thomas, take us away on as a TO. What did you guys have to, think of, plan? How did you guys come about organizing it?
Yeah, so we're a group of guys. We call ourselves HammerTime Tournaments. When our local TO moved away from the region, there was kind of a group of us found each other and we started putting on local events because otherwise none would happen. And this kind of came about after a GT we ran. We're supposed to be running in August at Kelowna Comic Con. Kelowna Comic Con's our sponsor, but I don't know if you heard, Kelowna burned down in August. The GT that was supposed to happen during the Comic Con was postponed because the Comic Con was postponed. We ran it in November, and after that GT, we're kind of like, well, I guess a teams tournament would be fun. Why don't we try doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a learning process for all of us of, well, what is involved in a teams tournament? I think the first one was picking the date and the venue. We did look at a couple venues, but it's one we've used in the past. It's a community hall in Lake Country, and we're having to find a date that works. One thing that we wanted to be careful of is not interfering with other GTs. So, for example, Dan's West Coast GT, we wanted to be far enough away that people wouldn't have to pick between one or the other. And so people could go to West Coast and go to our team's tournament. And I think actually the first date we were looking at was May the 4th. And so we were planning, I forget the name we were planning, but it was a Star Wars related pun. But then we ended up with April 20th, 420. So we called it Smoke Show.
I was wondering exactly where the Smoke Show either came from. So, but now we know.
Yeah. And then I do one thing we took pretty seriously because in our tournaments, we want to not just provide a competitive environment, but we want to provide a good experience and a fun time for everyone. In a singles tournament, you might just have 3 or 4 guys who have a realistic chance of winning, and the rest are there for the experience. Teams tournament, it might be 3 or 4 teams out of 10, but still everyone's there to have fun. And so one thing I actually we did was figure out what do teams who are coming from out of town want? What would actually make them feel comfortable enough to make the trip up to the Kelowna to come and visit us, or in the case of the Kamloops team, the Grand Forks team come over. So doing it during good weather is a good part. And another thing we took very seriously was making sure that we had an even number of teams. So you wouldn't have a team traveling from Vancouver and sitting out for 1 game, or if something goes wrong, potentially 2 games, which I've heard has happened in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those were kind of the decision points we made. We had a lot of other. I would guess as an organizing group, we put probably 400 hours into putting on this tournament.
Wow.
But
That's a lot of time.
A lot of that was all the terrain, all the mats, and all the objective markers for the tournament were bought or created. Actually, the mats, objective markers were designed and custom ordered by Kyle Francis, Silver Spire Games, and all the terrain he cut himself and designed himself.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I know. From our standpoint, the dates are probably one of the most important things you can do when trying to, start in the event scene, and then just trying to be consistent with that, and that's the only challenge, not the only challenge in the interior is the weather, but just trying to like get those dates that aren't competing with those other large events. Yeah, because like West Coast is a major drawer, and then later in the year you have kippers and so on and so forth. So um yeah, so sounds like a lot of work and a lot of stress, and um that's always I think one of the tough things with teams is, getting people to commit and stay committed all the way through. But that was really good that you guys had even amount of teams and got that sort of sorted. Danny, I know, has had some experiences with team events where that's been a bit of a frustration. So, that's good that this was very well organized. Before we hop into sort of more of like how the pairings are done and stuff like that, is there anything else from a planning perspective that you want to throw in there?
I'd be curious to hear Danny's perspective of just because I know we had a captain's chat in Discord, but that would have been just Jake. But just
Yeah.
from your perspective, how much information did you have? Did you feel like you had enough? Did you have a forum to ask questions? Did you not really pay attention to anything leading up to it?
So, as with all events, players often don't read the player pack. That's a common theme. We
Yep.
know this ourselves too. This partially applied to me. We were a little bit more caught up in trying to learn and focus on practicing the whole pairings thing and teams and all that kind of stuff. We got a little too caught up and we forgot about some of the things like the display board. And when we got there, we all kind of talked and agreed that the next time, at least, if for those of us of the five of us that go to play for teams next time, we want to try and do similar, and we want to have a huge display board for our entire team, kind of thing.
Nice.
Because I was seeing that was in a way inspiring. Just some of the efforts that some people had put through. It's something I know that unfortunately isn't as common, at least outside of Pacific Northwest, from what I've heard and seen. Like I believe over in the UK, they don't really do much for display boards at events, which is interesting. But that's one thing that's I sort of wish my captain had emphasized more was the alternative scoring other than just playing games. I know that was in the player pack, but we got a little too caught up in just the mechanics of teams and how it works.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much the main thing. Nothing else I could think of. Most of the information was there. The table layout helped a lot for figuring out like where we had to go. Everything was very well organized in that manner. So a lot of the information provided to us helped.
That's good.
It was appreciated.
All right, cool. So speaking of that table layout, it's going to cut off some of our video here, but I'm just going to throw up a picture of that table layout. This cuts Danny off. I'll see if I can reorganize it a
That's
little
okay.
bit.
I can talk
Yeah.
since I can probably refer
Oh, there.
to
There
our
we go.
experience.
I'll go like this. We'll
There.
side shift. But so yeah, so this was the day one round robin. So in the first day, all the pairings were pre-established, and then based on the results of that, led to day two, where there was two semifinals, two finals, and then just another group of guys that didn't make it to that aspect of it. I think I got that right.
Yeah, it was a top four cutoff, and then
Yeah, top four cutoff. Yeah.
they pair off the winners of those pairings who would go up to do the finals, and then those that didn't make that ended up fighting against each other to determine third and fourth place, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. And another six
Absolutely.
teams still played 2 games. So we made sure that everyone who came got 5 games, and
Awesome.
it was just a round robin pool for the first day.
Oh, sweet. So, yeah, so you've got all your tables laid out, and then your side tables. Were you also running some other different things there?
So we
yeah, I'll let you.
So they were set up for drop-in games.
Awesome.
We ended up having the TO tables off to the side as well, and we just put the word out for the local players in the community that we have trains set up. We have extra mats. I don't remember seeing anyone coming to use them, but I was pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have any tournament going on the side, but it was just open for the community to come in and play.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So yeah, so you see your different table layouts, and then with WTC, like we'll see here a little bit. Actually, I don't know if I didn't bring that in part of the train, but there's different train layouts, so light, medium, heavy, that dictate sort of how those tables line out.
Danny, how did
Yes.
the Vancouver teams like having? So we debated as a TO group whether to do round robin day one, so then you know your pairings. I think we released pairings 15 or 10 days in advance,
Yep.
quite far in advance for the first round robin. So lists were submitted, and then we immediately opened up pairings. And the other option was just to do the Swiss pairing for all 5 games of the tournament. How did your team feel about the round robin format?
From what at least I could tell, there's kind of sort of an upside and downside to both. When it comes to round robin, there is a certain element of sort of excitement of preparing for like your round 2 and round 3, knowing what you're going to be up against at the time, at least for the first 3 rounds, and trying to figure out for the mission you have for that round and what works best for if you're going to be paired with them. Kind of helps sort of figure out like how some, because in certain missions, for example, me playing Grey Knights, playing into Votan, whether or not Scramble of Fields is an effect can wildly change how that game can go, or what sort of primary mission we're playing. So in a way, there's a certain amount of emphasis on like team communication and trying to figure that out for those that were investing a lot into the Matrix. Because I know some teams they had a blast. Just I know for round 4 and 5, the mid-table tyrant guys they just randomly did pairings. So there's a certain amount of element of for those that are interested in trying to do the matchup matrix. You can have a lot of fun with that. But I do know it's sort of that thing where when you go to an event, the first 2 rounds can kind of help separate sort of the focus of players sometimes. Those that are pushing more for the competitive thing can sometimes end up sort of in the same pool. It is limited because there were only 10 teams, but it did seem like everyone still had a similar mindset, so it worked out. Overall, I liked it. I think if you guys went to do more teams, I probably wouldn't do the round robin. As in, if you guys expanded, if you decided to have more teams per se playing, so rather than 10, if it got up to like 12 or even up to 16, if you guys got a larger venue, I probably wouldn't do the round robin. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about, actually. I know we saw the round robin and we just kind of acknowledged, accepted it, and kind of went in head first.
Because I don't know if you noticed this, but none of the Vancouver teams played each other in the round robin.
That we did notice and we appreciated.
That was the primary driver behind the round robin format, was to have 3 Vancouver teams out of 10. We had a bunch of Kelowna teams, but like we can't figure out how to not play each other. And we had a Kamloops team and a Grand Forks team. And I was like, okay, we can ensure for the first 3 matches that the 3 Vancouver teams do not play each other. Because then you didn't drive all this way just to somehow play 2 games against the guys you drove up with. And as well, you don't knock each other out in the round robin stage.
So I do really appreciate that. Not for the second part. We were looking to try and knock each other out. But for the first part, I do appreciate that because there's a certain amount of element where I know people that will go out of town for an event with some friends, and then the first or second rounds, sometimes second, due to putting in team names, but getting paired against people that you already know or are going up with, sometimes it's sort of well, we spent all this money and all this time traveling to come play together at this event when we could have done that at home. I do think for the first time we're in a team event, this is probably the best decision you guys could have gone with because it worked out quite nicely. I do think that if this becomes more of an annual event, if there are teams that will repeatedly come to it or similar players that will come, round robin might not be as necessary because it's good for that initial introduction of meeting a variety of people. But if you do get like a core group of players that are consistently playing teams, then it might get to the point where they don't mind even when they play against people they know.
And quite frankly, as a TO, it is just so much easier to hit pair in BCP.
Yes. I imagine there's also a lot less stress having to do pairings at the moment for each round versus just having it all set for the one day and then having it all set for the second day. Well, kind of set for the second day.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So, going into the actual pairings and everything, Danny, walk us brought up this is now the WTC guide on pairings, but for guys that don't know how that works, now it's set for 8 teams, but obviously works perfectly fine for 5. Walk us through this in sort of how this works.
So the only difference between 5 and 8 is how many decision points you have between picking matchups. So the whole idea is that when 2 teams come to their set of tables, each team will put down a defender simultaneously, secretly. They'll reveal at the same time. So the defender is a player they're putting forward. They'll get to pick what table they want to play on. The priority can switch back and forth. And then once both defenders have been revealed, one from each team, the opposing team for each defender will put down 2 attackers at the same time. And then one of those 2 attackers is selected to fight against the defending player by said defending team. And then the one not picked will go back into the team's pool. And then they'll do this a second time. And then afterwards, there'll be 1 player from each team left that will pair up against with whatever is remaining from the opposing team. It's a little weird doing it initially if you don't have any practice or if you've never done it before. Yeah, so there's a good example. Both teams had put forward their 2 defenders to the attackers.
Oh, and then they get their table choice token.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it essentially goes back and forward until the very last pairing is just plays on whatever table is left. But there's a interesting element of deciding what you want to put forward as your first defender, how important table layouts are for those players. So each table had varying different elements or designs to it that some armies would look at and go, I don't want to play on that. That looks horrible. I know on the Tyrants team, one of our players, Jordan, when he was like first trying out some of the WTC tables just to see what it was like before the event, he found the ones where they have sort of in the center of the board, there's 2 L-shaped ruins that kind of sit like this. And there's 2 crates between the gaps, just going to help add some line of sight blocking. But they're set up in such a perfect spot that for the large Tyranid bugs, they sort of get like traffic jammed in there, and it's an absolute nightmare for them to move through. But there are other tables that are a lot easier for them to go through there. So it's sort of that interesting element of how important is a terrain for the players, how they want to try to prepare, if they even care. Or sometimes they'll know what is attacking them, and they can pick a table that's disadvantageous for their opponent. There's a whole bunch of cool, fun things you can do with that if you really want to get into the whole pairings.
Nice.
Sometimes it's decisions made on the spot. Sometimes it's preparation.
Very cool. So so you're not only just trying to get into favorable matchups, but also play on try and get the tables that are favorable to those matchups as well.
Or sometimes you're trying to take a matchup that even if it sucks for you, it's worse for your buddies. So you're trying to jump on a grenade. So
yeah.
I know. I think
and then
Jake tried to do it once or twice.
And I know like you sort of break down your team into like defenders and attackers, right? Guys that'll push and guys that'll jump on grenades, right? So that's part of the team stuff I'd like to go and experience one day. So hopefully one day I'll be able to get out and come to one of the events. So anything else on the pairing you guys want to add on to?
I mean, I was so busy as a TO, I just showed up at pairings, and my captain told me where I was going, and I went there. So I don't have a lot to add, but people seem to take it pretty seriously.
Yeah, it's interesting because as a player, you can either be invested and talk to your captain, or you can just be hands off and just say, "Hey, tell me where to go." Just nice in a way.
Well, before we get out of the actual event stuff, I'm going to move some stuff on the outline that we kind of did. I'm going to just actually bring in the teams now because I figure this is a good segue into the teams. Mid-table sent up two teams. One we kind of laughed about was more competitive than the other, but like I said, wanted to knock each other out probably as well. Um, and then there was another Vancouver team. Where was that's the team with JT on it, right? I think this was no, that's the Grand Forks team. Um, which
I
was the other
believe he was
Vancouver
technically
team?
on the grid.
Gary Sacco was their captain.
Yes, Super Smash
Oh,
Bros.
Yep.
Yeah.
They had
Oh,
a
here we go.
what
Okay, so
rule did he impose? Everyone had to bring a Titan model or
Every
Titanic.
a Titanic model of some sort.
Yes.
Trying to
nice.
think because
That's pretty
Brent, I
funny.
think technically, I think the monolith for Brent counts. I know Gary brought a Night Warden. Keone brought technically brought both Angron and a Lord of Skulls, I believe.
Yep.
Matthew Hain brought a Gargantuan Squigoth, and Mike Diekelman is bringing Chaos Knights, so he brought 3 big knights.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
they had a fun little thing
That's
they did
awesome.
there.
My
That's cool.
day
And then,
one game 3
yeah.
match was against Mike, and we were both exhausted and finished the game sitting next to each other, sharing a dice tray, just like literally sitting in the chairs, just sharing the dice tray.
That sounds pretty
That's
good,
awesome.
actually.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Hmm.
And then the other mid-table. So we'll quickly run through this one. So this is mid-table Tyrants, sponsored by Minor Creations. So if you guys need terrain or any sort of fun stuff, I think it's just minorcreations.com. So
Yep.
so that's Dan's team company, and he also has, I think it's West Coast miniature events. He put on West Coast and some other things. And he helps out with other tournaments. So Dan's playing Votan. Jordan Gallagher is playing Tyranids. Kyle Gray is playing Ultramarines. Miles Scott's playing Eldari. And then Shane Mitchell's playing Death Corps. I know. I think Jordan went 5-0. I don't know what the rest of the results are. Unfortunately, we can't get those things. I'm not a subscriber on BCF, but I know that Jordan had a really good tournament.
And
I know.
Jordan actually, you can say this if you want.
You go first. That's the more important part.
I was saying Jordan actually was voted best individual sportsman for the tournament,
Oh wow!
as voted
Which
by the players,
Awesome.
and so he
I
won.
will.
Oop.
I gotta just point out the part that this is amazing is because in all 5 games he played, he crushed his opponents. I think the least score he got was a 14 or a 15. So he won by at least 20 or more points in every game. Got
Yep.
third best overall differential score and got best opponent, which is honestly impressive.
Nice, very nice. Sorry, what were you going to say about or just that's what you were going to put in, Thomas, about Jordan? He
Yeah.
got best
What we
overall.
Yeah, and what we do is for best sportsman at our tournaments, they win a ticket to our next one. So Jordan got a free ticket to the Comic-Con GT in June, and he actually got a
wicked.
free coaching call from Happy Crumping Wargaming.
Oh, sweet,
Yeah.
sweet. I know Shane. I think he fell on a few grenades. In or maybe that was just a list. I'm not sure. In some of his results, I'd kind of seen some of them, but that was the, as we put it, our the drinking team more than the competitive team, which is not really true, but we were just bugging them. And then yeah, then the other Vancouver team that we know, these guys quite well is Super Smash Bros. Gary Sacco is actually part of mid-table tactics now. He's finally joined the team, and yeah, we know the rest of these guys. They come to our GTs, and then where are we? We're gonna find there's the Knights of the mid-table. Jake is captain. Daniel, your
I was Grey
army's not in
Knights.
there, so I know.
Don't know
I knew
why.
you were playing Grey Knights. Yeah, for some reason it didn't show up. But Darren, with his Thousand Sons list that he's having a lot of fun with, just devastating people off the board. And then there's Jake with his Eldari, Liam with his Necrons, and then Steve of Play on Tabletop. He's also part of our competitive team at mid-table. He's playing his Ultramarines, and like you said at the beginning, we weren't recording, but Steve did quite well with his Ultramarines.
Yep. So I'm just going to point out, because I'm calling out for justice for Steve. He would not lay off Jake. There's a certain point where it started off as a funny joke, but then he kept on pressuring, and I think he's going to bring it to the next MTT GT. He wanted to bring Anvil Force for Space Marines, the Imperial Fist Detachment. And at first, it was like, Jake laughed and went, no. And then when he kept on asking, Jake started like worrying about him just last minute submitting an Anvil Force list. He didn't, which at the time we had appreciated. And then we looked and we saw that there was an Imperial Fist player playing Anvil Force. Steve was really hoping to get that matchup, but Jake ended up not getting him paired into that. So we're going to see Wrath of Steve in the next MPTGT.
Sweet. And then I think Liam did quite well with his broken list.
Out of 5 games, so for WTC, there's a 0 to 20 differential. Both players, if they tie, they get 10 points. And for every 5 points more than your opponent, or more than 5 points, you take one of their 10 points. So in order to get 20 points in a game, you need to score at least 100 to them getting 50, or like 90 to them getting 40. Across 5 games, Liam dropped 4 differential points.
Wow.
So
That's
he got
impressive.
20, 20, 20, 16, and 20.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that list is crazy. And judging by the data slate today, it didn't get hammered that badly. So
he lost 125 points, and his list is changing heavily. So
I know he's dropping 2 Satans, which is yay.
now
as a you know what though, as a Custodes player that
lost their
as
minus
much
1
as
damage, you don't care as much about ignore modifiers.
Exactly. With Trajan basically just getting taken out back and shot in both kneecaps and then decapitated.
Fine.
I know. I still got to talk it up. That'll help with that. But
right, I'm gonna call with 2 Custodes players, aren't I?
Yeah.
Well, I did start on building my Space Wolves today. I've been sitting my pile of shame since I bought them used in June. So
yes.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I've been bugging Danny that I have literally sitting by my feet in my desk, my 75% built Grey Knights army that is a 9th sort of layout, so I need to convert them up to 10th. I know, but I also bugged Danny about borrowing his Imperial Knights and just having to go with those for a little bit.
Yeah.
So and then your team is it? Which one's yours, Thomas?
I was on the 4th Aerlingus.
Yes. Just
okay. There we go. So, you want to walk us through your team?
Yeah, I'll just go and see it. So we had Eric playing Astra Militarum, that's guard. We had Chris on Drukhari. Then we had a different Eric who was playing Eldari, but it was a Harlequin list, very similar to the Drukhari list, although I don't actually know what either of them were bringing. Kyle's the guy who built all the train. And we had a player drop. So on April 5th, 2 weeks before the event, he bought a Votan army and painted it for this event, as well as building all the terrain. And then there's me with Custodes.
2 things.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Kyle's an awesome person then for that case. Second of all, Eric is a saint. We went into our game both being a little bit serious, trying to do the best we can. At one point, he just went, you know what? We both know how this is going to turn out. For those who don't know, Eldari is a great matchup for Grey Knights. He was a champion, and he was able to get 1 point, which normally against Eldari that's like a 0 points for differential. Grey Knights usually really like playing into Eldari. If it's a player who's not prepared or hasn't played against Grey Knights, they can be a lot because it's Space Marines with high volume shooting against Eldar bodies that want to hide. They don't get to
But you
hide.
can, yeah, you don't get that. Yeah.
But he was a safe for that game, despite the fact that it was a tough game for him. What it see from on my end of what I had, he was a great player, honestly. On great example of just sportsmanship and just being a good gentleman.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's I had a pretty solid team. Well, talking about like a off the field team, all just a good group of guys.
Oh yeah.
And who? So because I can't see the finals and also the placings were hidden, who won the event in the end?
So best overall was who I refer to as the Eagles of Test or the Exam Falcons. It is the Test Eagles.
If you say the whole name out loud at once, it becomes aware of what it means. When I read it, it was like, huh, strange name. It wasn't until you said it out loud at the event, I
I
was
just
like, oh, there we go. That
I
makes
just got
sense.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Blood Angels, Necron. Was it anybody know if that was Hypercrypt or if it was um Cryptic?
I think it was Uppy Downy.
Is
Okay.
that one?
Death Guard, interesting, and then another Tyranids list and Leagues of Votan. It's like everybody had like a Votan player almost, or there's quite a bit. I
That was
think.
a
Oh, maybe just
canop-
those.
that was a canoptic court for the Necrons. We had listed down.
Okay, so shooty, very shooty list, and then Death Guard, which slow but just grinding, and then Tyranids. Nice. Okay, so they ended up going first, and then who was second?
Second would have been Participant, and they were. So one thing we did at this tournament was we had the opportunity to enter as a store team. That's why
Yep.
Minor Tactics had 2 teams, and
Yep.
Participant was from Obsidian Games in Vernon.
Okay.
And then because of the highest placing store team, they actually won the large trophy scalp, which was probably a 3-foot thunder hammer.
Oh wow!
There's a photo
I
of
do,
kicking
and
around
I do have
somewhere.
some. Yeah, I do have some photos of that, so I'll throw them up here in a second. So we had an Imperial Knights list, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, World Eaters, and then Astra Militarum, and then the team captain was Tanya Gates. I don't remember. I apologize. She is the War Mistress, and I know that she has. Is it the War Mistress podcast or I'm not sure exactly. It's
Believe
YouTube
so.
channel. Yeah. So very very cool. And then third.
We actually played against participant round 4. So
Oh, okay.
so we had they had a very good way, at least. I don't know the exact details. I'm pretty sure what they were doing is most of the pairings they were doing random. But I believe
100% random.
they always had David as second defender, I'm willing to guess.
Nope.
Really?
They did 100% blind.
That it worked out very well for them.
I was gonna say like Imperial Knights on WTC boards, and if he hits like a heavy terrain board, that's very tough.
There are some boards that have some good firing lanes that
Mhm.
Imperial Knights would like.
Nice.
But because they're doing random pairings, Jake fumbled a bit and didn't quite get us the pairings we were hoping for. We ended up
Okay.
just slightly losing this round by like a point or two short of tying it. Because there's a bracket of where you can tie it for pairings. This is
Yep.
the one round where Liam didn't have practice into Death Guard, and he only got 16-4 rather than 20-0. And then Steve
Damn it,
went
Liam.
Steve went to the World Eaters player. It sounds like they had a blast of a game. It was very close and very crazy. Darren played against Tanya. I played against the Imperial Knights player. And then Jake ended up eating dirt against David Burnett, who's a very good Thousand Suns player.
Yep.
I had a really good time against Chris, at least. There's a couple points. The Imperial Knights list he brought was really interesting because it was a Castellan, 2 Paladins, and 4 Helvarians, so it was just full gun line. It's a lot of 3 damage shooting, so it was very interesting list to try and play against. I had a fun time against it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like it. And then third place was did we got third? Okay.
Yep, Knights of the Mid-Table.
All right. Oh, awesome. And then who did you play in the last round?
That was my team.
Frank the
All right.
Arliness.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Very cool. So, sounded like a blast of all of those rounds, and we do have some pictures. Let me throw up. Where are we here? So, as I had said, here's the sponsored um, team.
And so that was made by actually a guy on the Eagles of Test, one of the TOs,
Oh,
Laurie
wow.
Richard, and he does custom sculpts for either
Wow.
cosplay or just people who want 40K sculpts. And this was his
That's
contribution to
pretty
the
cool.
main contribution. These take about a week's worth of work to handcraft.
hmm
And so it's a pretty awesome trophy, which ironically he made for the team that he beat.
Nice. Nice.
I'm-
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I know he has a wait list, I think, for commissions. I need to hop on that because I want to get a Nemesis Force halberd made or something along that line. Just
Cool.
to go all in.
So I'll show. So this was just a picture. Just wanted to show sort of the tables and the events there, and the the different way that so it's a big hall actually, lots of room, and then we have
Danny, how did you guys like the huge sideboards?
So there was an upside and a downside to them. The great part was just having so much space where you
here, I'll
could
put
just
this in.
put down if you had a display board, you didn't have to worry about trying to pack it up or giving it out of the way. If you had a bunch of game aids, like such as widgets from minerecreations.com, highly recommend check that out. Or just dice or dead models or anything of that sort. There's a lot of space for that. That was really nice. The only times it was more of a hindrance than an aid were the missions where it was either the hammer and anvil or the short triangles, where it's not quite hammer and anvil, not quite. It's the short stubby triangle essentially.
Yeah.
Those ones were a bit more having to try and reach into the center. I know on my end, and at least from my opponent, when we played hammer and anvil, wasn't that bad because we were playing elite armies. But I could imagine that might be a bit harder for like a horde army. It wasn't too bad though, because there's lots of space around the tables, so it wasn't like you had to run down an aisle, run back up the other side to get to your table, and then just move into the other side. But
And
you're saying?
I did notice, I did this for a couple of games setting up. You turn the mat 90 degrees depending on how you want your layout.
Yeah.
But it was a something we talked about for a while as a TO group, is whether to use the hall tables pushed together in this format and then just have everyone on their own super table, or if we'd actually bring in toppers. They're just the 4x8 and cut them down to size. That just adds a lot of cost and a lot of logistics.
Were the hall tables wide enough where you could turn the mat sideways for the like? Would they have been long enough to turn the mat like 90 degrees to adjust for that?
Yeah. So like some of these, not in these photos, the mats you can turn 90 degrees and you have about 4 inches to spare on either end.
Okay, that probably is something that would have been just like a quick announcement for that, because it didn't even click in for most of my pairings, I think. It's the only thing I could think of. Had I known that, I would have taken full advantage of that, because even playing Elite Army, there's a certain point where, due to the height of the tables, my back was starting to not be quite as happy.
Yeah.
Cool. And then so this is the best generals team, and their win there. And then we also have the sports best sports team. So there's JT and those guys from that team. And then we have the big group photo. So
There we go.
yeah, that looked like an awesome event. Wish I could have been there, but like I said, maybe next time. And then yeah, you were saying that they do have some acoustic, the tiles that are acoustic up on the ceiling that that they use to sort of cut down on the sound there.
Yeah, they're just like the square tiles. They're not anything super fancy, but on the sides, above the trim and on the
Oh,
ceiling,
on the side. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
I guess, insulated and also dampening tiles. So it's not
Oh,
like you're in
cool.
a big wooden hall that's just like a gymnasium that's just reflecting the noise. So it's
Yep.
still noisy, but wasn't deafening, and you could have a conversation with your opponent.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So, yeah. So then, for the for the event, things that are outside the event, I know traveling can be a bit of an issue, and everyone wants to, uh, you know, people have traveled to events, as singles before. But Danny, how was it with traveling with teams?
So
To
thankfully, the weather at the time for the drive up was gorgeous. I think there wasn't any snow, but it was largely either sunny or very light clouds the whole way up and pretty much the whole way
Mhm.
down. So that was thankfully nice, just cruise going up there. As
Sweet.
for staying there, thankfully there were a couple hotels that were very close to the venue as well as to a lot of places to eat. I know the place we had stayed at was the Super 8, which was pretty good deal for what it was. And there was Save on Foods that was right across the street. There was a liquor store as well right beside that. Several really good places it seemed like to eat. We went to for dinner the first day for the Friday. We went to a place called Viva La Mexicana. It's like a little hole in the wall place that served Mexican food.
Hmm.
Really good. Um, and then I know one thing I really appreciated was the end of the first day, you guys had called a very nearby pub to give them a heads up for a bunch of people coming in. Um, that was actually really helpful because they seemed to be prepared for a whole bunch of nerds come in and want to drink.
That was the local
Nice.
Woody's pub. I We had talked about bigger plans, like maybe organizing a trivia night at the pub, but none of us on the team had energy to do that at this point. But we had the
Yep.
foresight to call the pub ahead of time. Say, like, look, we're probably going to send about 40 guys your way at 8 p.m. on Saturday. So be ready.
Nice. Yeah, I think it would be hard. It's you always want to kind of go out after the first day, but you've just played 9 hours of Warhammer, and either your brain is mush, or you're running on fumes, and you kind of want to eat, and then drink, and then crash, so you get ready for the second day. So the venue was really good. The food was good. I know we teased about talking about this before, but bathrooms were good, Danny, and like
Yep.
the overall facility, and water, and everything was sort of available and all that.
So I'm just going to point out three things first before we go into talking about the venue specifically. One, the
Hmm.
service at Woody's was great. The waitress we had was just like cracking along with their jokes and such. Great for that. Two, the food was amazing. I had an elk meatloaf, which I've never had before, but that was really nice. And they also have these really good
Nice.
the chicken wings they had there was amazing. And I think just having that just casual like go to the bar and sit down and just unwind was probably the best. I think a lot of us were
Mhm.
burnt out at the first day. As for the venue itself, these glorious bastards had a coffee brewing there, which was amazing for both mornings, especially after the first day and drinking the first night.
Nice.
I
There's
I did make it a little strong the first day. I didn't have I couldn't. All the cupboards in the kitchen were locked, so it's a hall with a full commercial kitchen. And the only thing I had to measure was just a coffee cup. And I was like, I hope this is 1 cup, and added a
you
lot
know
of beans,
what?
apparently.
It's good to get people right into gear and going and wake up right away to get ready for pairing. So,
I will say
um,
we didn't have food at the event, so we didn't provide lunch. One thing we were looking into is either arranging a pre-order with a neighboring restaurant for lunch, or lumping it, providing lunch on day one as price of the ticket. But
Mhm.
it adds 20 to 25, $30 per ticket if you're just doing one lunch.
Yep.
I
No, we've dabbled with it, because we hold our events. They're at the Legion, so sometimes they have people that run the kitchen for them, and sometimes they don't. So we've done the days that they didn't have people in there. We ended up like just doing hot dogs and stuff like that, which was decent for the first event, and then luckily the last couple of events they've had people running the food there, so we just go to them beforehand and say, there's going to be 40 guys coming for lunch, and pretty much everyone ate at the event. So if there's ever anyone running the kitchen, hopefully you can convince them to do lunch for you guys, and then that makes sense. So
I will say there was at least half a dozen places or more to eat within not even a 5-minute walk of the venue. There's a
okay.
little sandwich shop that Jake had found that was right around the corner. There's a Domino's. There was a Dairy Queen. Um, it looked like there was a little like Italian sandwich shop, but unfortunately they weren't open until like 4 p.m. on Saturday. They're closed Sunday. But there's a whole bunch of places to at least walk nearby, so it wasn't a huge deal. I know our venue for the MTT there's not a whole lot. I mean, there's an A&W and an Arby's that's like just down the street.
So no, so just up the block you have.
Yeah.
Well, technically there was a Street Eats, but there is a Domino's Pizza. There's um, a Korean chicken place. There's a McDonald's, an Arby's, an A&W, a Tim Hortons, a Starbucks, a
So
Subway. So
I
all fast
I
food, but not any
I
kind of pub. And then there's one pub.
I will interrupt at least with that one. You still need to, if you walk, it's going to be probably a good 10-minute walk potentially or more.
Hmm.
I found at least with this venue, the places to walk to were less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. This venue is in what used to be Winfield, which has merged and with other municipalities become Lake Country, but it is in the heart
Hmm.
of what used to be downtown Winfield. So there's still a good cluster of services and shops around. And we're trying to figure out a
Very
way
cool.
as a TO group, like if we start catering food, it's not just added cost, it's also added logistical burden. So like at our tournament, we had a dedicated ref. That was Alex McDougall. And a lot of us were very, very happy that he was a ref and not a player. Because if you know Alex McDougall, he is a ruthless
Yep.
and a phenomenal player, but very friendly. And then we had
Hmm.
Pat not play and help with logistics. But we're all volunteers. None of us are getting paid for this. And so trying to coordinate food just adds that cost and adds that burden to us. But if we can find a restaurant they'll be willing to show up and take orders and then come back an hour later with a bag of sandwiches, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
I will say at least it's definitely a nice thing for convenience, but I don't think it's something that you guys necessarily stress about. There's so much nearby that it's
Mhm.
not an effort, or it's not it doesn't take much effort or work, at least on the players' end, to find somewhere nearby to eat. So you guys have found a really good location for that.
Sweet. That's good to hear.
Very, very, very cool. So we've gone and we've blown through our agenda. So Thomas, is there anything you want to plug before we wrap it up?
Oh, definitely. First thing is our website. It's just hammertimetournaments.ca. It's very basic, but it has all the information you need there. And we've got our, I guess, plugging Kelowna Comic Con. So Kelowna Comic Con is the driving force behind us. They're the ones who back us and allow us to put on these events. And so we have a GT at the upcoming Kelowna Comic Con, which is happening in Kelowna June 22nd and 23rd. And then we're in discussions about putting on some local AOS events, maybe a doubles RTT or doubles tournament. And then, of course, looking at dates for, we're looking at right now fall teams and fall or winter GT.
Very, very cool. All right. So I'll do our normal bit of spiel. So we just want to throw a shout out.
Okay.
Oh, Danny, you got something before I go?
One question: are you guys still deciding if it's gonna be a 5-man or 8-man teams?
So we did ask for feedback in the thing, and the overwhelming response was 5.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That way we can at least plan
Very
for
cool.
that.
Very cool. So yeah, so we just want to give a shout out to Proxy Wars. They've debuted a few models on the channel. Danny's been one of the ones that's ran one of their nights. Very good quality. And yeah, give them a look. And then We also have our Heroes of the Mid-Table Spring GT. There is on waitlist right now, but we have usually blown through our waitlist in the last little bit, and we've always had full events, but check out the Discord and get into the waitlist if you want to come out for that one. It's a 40-player GT, and we hold one basically every quarter. So there'll be another one in August and then November. And then obviously the best way to help us support the channel is grab a membership. I think we have 2 membership levels now. Just one a little bit cheaper as well if you could just help out. And yeah, thank you guys for coming on. I'm just going to put in the outro, but thank you so much for helping us talk about the events, go over the winners, and look forward. I want to try and get out to your team's event in the fall. So
Yeah,
thank you very much, guys.
we'll get around to picking a date. We've happy to say, but sorry for you, Daniel. We already got in the queue ahead of you for sculpt from Laurie. He makes phenomenal sculpts, which is
That
why
is
he
okay.
has. I think he was saying a
7 or-
4-month.
I know he at least has 7 or 8 people in the lineup. There's a
Yeah.
fair
Oh,
amount of
wow.
people.
So me trying to get Trajan's axe or Guardian spear is probably quite a ways off.
Yeah.
No, you just have to contact him as soon as possible.
Nice. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I'm just gonna end out the video here. So hang on a second.